listener communications, and maybe some astrophysics. You're listening to Brothers of the Snake Force. Live. No mistakes.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you, sort of not live, but live to the Discord from the 10x10x10 tangent cube of science. Nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Elbrus Plateau, and this is our final episode of 2020. We are recording this on December the 30th. So it's the last sode. We figured we'd do it live to the Discord.
Last sode of the year.
Last sode of the year. Final sode ever.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're joined by a whole bunch of trolls in the Discord.
Thank you all for being trolls.
Yeah.
We love you.
Yeah. In the morning, trolls. How are you guys doing? And so I have this plan.
Oh.
Let's talk about the plan for a minute here, right?
Okay.
Kyle told me I needed to do this, and now he's acting like I shouldn't do it.
Oh. Can't believe you took my advice. That's a bad idea.
So I've been working on a presentation that would be sort of in the style that GMA does, or maybe like Randall does. So it would be a slideshow. I don't plan on doing this a whole lot. It's tough putting this together. But my idea was I could get this presentation together, and then because we also have a plan for the next book report, and I want to do this presentation before that book report starts, because I think this information is important for that for the book report. So I was trying to have it done and ready to do this week, but I was unable to do that. We have a lot of other things going on. You know, it's still the holiday season. Plus, we had a lot of Cosmographia stuff to do. We had some follow-up to do on the Arizona trip.
Yep.
So I just didn't have enough time to finish putting it together this week. So hopefully that presentation will be next week. It'll be the first show of 2021. So this week, what we're going to do is finish up with our stack of stuff, which includes catching up on all the listener communications and going through all the articles that we've had that have backed up over the course of however long. And, you know, I've got a couple, Kyle's got some, but I have a lot of emails that I want to go through. So that's what this episode is for. So next week will be the presentation. This week is listener communications and maybe some astrophysics, right? You have some dark matter stuff?
Yeah.
Try to talk about
Yeah, I'll give my best shot at talking about dark matter.
things you don't believe in.
I'll just be winging it.
I mean, that's what we do here.
That's right.
Winging it is the thing.
Winging it.
It's the thing we do.
And I am in the process of learning what I can. I've rekindled interest in what the modern science is.
Big picture is
of the dark matter.
Yeah.
And it is interesting. It's an interesting quest that they're on to figure out what the hell's going on. So, I was annoyed with it for a long time, and I stopped reading any dark matter stories. And just started making fun of the headlines, and now I'm kind of trying to get back. I'm getting back into it.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because you and I had a conversation about this last night. And that made me, I was like, all right, so Kyle's looking into this again, and he's looking at dark matter specifically and some of the newest science around that. So I did the same thing today.
Yay!
So
it will definitely be much better that way.
So I did that in preparation to have more things to contribute when you start talking about.
Sweet.
Yeah. So cool.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, without further ado, my button doesn't work as usual.
Let's bring the Watcher on to say hi.
Hey, Watcher, how's it going, buddy?
Watcher, how you doing out there, bud? Or your space station is in the same place?
No, it's been hovering in the El Paso area since November 3rd.
Ah. Geosynchronous orbit over El Paso.
Yep.
All right. Well, I know your work schedule's crazy right now, so I definitely appreciate that you can be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a word for it.
It's kind of evil for us to demand that you show up to listen to the show live every time, even though you've been working 24s constantly. When do you sleep? No, never mind. You don't do that anymore. So, yeah, we really appreciate it, man.
20 straight 12.5-hour shifts.
Yeah, it's, I know, you've been telling us your shifts are crazy. So, yep, definitely appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Yep.
Do something that...
All right, cool.
Yeah.
General bad connection with space.
Yeah.
But yeah, we love you, buddy. And yeah, thanks for being here. So,
how about the keyboard? Does it work now?
Probably not. Nope.
It doesn't. Let's see.
Hold on.
Okay.
All right. And without further ado,
Space Weather News from spaceweather.com, where we get all our space weather news.
That's right.
Just about all of it. Geomagnetic Unrest. The NOAA forecasters say that there is a chance of geomagnetic unrest today on December the 30th when a minor stream of solar wind hits Earth's magnetic field. The gaseous material is flowing from a small hole in the sun's atmosphere, so Arctic skywatchers should be alert for auroras, especially during the hours around local midnight. Also, stratospheric clouds over Iceland. The season for polar stratospheric clouds, or PSCs, has begun. A person whose name I cannot pronounce spotted them over a place whose name I can't pronounce on the 28th of December. They looked a little bit like auroras in daytime, she said. I think this is the most beautiful season of the year. So polar stratospheric clouds are newsworthy because normally the stratosphere has no clouds at all. The stratosphere is arid and almost always transparent. So coaxing widely spaced water molecules together to make icy stratospheric clouds requires extremely low temperatures below 85 degrees Celsius. Satellite data show that it has been just that cold. There's a plot here. Note the yellow circle in this plot of minimum temperatures. Where's the yellow circle? Yeah, it's way down there. Minus 150 Kelvin. Or 150 Kelvin. In late December, temperatures briefly dipped low enough for the formation of Type 2 PSCs, the colorful type that were recently seen. If NASA's Mera 2 climate forecast is correct, the stratosphere will warm again later this week, forestalling more PSC sightings until January. Each sighting is special because PSCs are far more rare than the auroras, so stay tuned for more as Arctic winter deepens.
Dun, dun, dun.
Current conditions, solar wind speed, 450.2 kilometers per second, and the density is 7.2 protons per cubic centimeter. Sunspot number currently is 26. Spotless days in 2020 is now down to 57%, and that's probably where it will remain. Let's see, the neutron count is 9.6% above the space age average, and the KP index is 3, rated as quiet. That's the upper end of the quiet, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And from Earth Sky News, new sunspot cycle could be among the strongest on record. A study of oppositely charged magnetic field bands moving in the sun's northern and southern hemispheres suggests the coming sunspot cycle, cycle 25, will be a particularly strong one. This result contradicts an earlier expert forecast suggesting a weak cycle 25. So, let's see. This is in italics. Should I read this? Maybe not. In direct contradiction to the official forecast from NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center, the U.S. government's official source for space weather forecasts, watches, warnings, and alerts, a team of scientists led by the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado, is predicting that the sunspot cycle that started this fall could be one of the strongest since record-keeping began, which was in 1755. In a new article published November 24th, 2020, in the peer-reviewed journal Solar Physics, the research team predicts the sunspot cycle 25 will peak with a maximum sunspot number somewhere between approximately 210 and 260, which would put the new cycle in the company of the top few ever observed. The cycle that just ended, sunspot cycle 24, peaked with a sunspot number of 116. And the consensus forecast from a panel of experts convened by NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, is predicting that Sunspot Cycle 25 will be similarly weak. The panel predicts a peak sunspot number of 115.
Oh.
Okay, so basically, Noaa is predicting this will be also weak, and then this new study is like, no, this will be one of the strongest on record. So there's these two teams of scientists are disagreeing on this.
Huh.
If the new NCAR-led forecast is borne out, which is the strong, the strong forecast,
Yeah.
it would lend support to the research team's unorthodox theory, detailed in a series of papers published over the last decade, that the sun has overlapping 22-year magnetic cycles that interact to produce the well-known approximately 11-year sunspot cycle as a byproduct. The 22-year cycles repeat like clockwork and could be a key to finally making accurate predictions of the timing and nature of sunspot cycles, as well as many of the effects they produce, according to the study's authors. So, scientists have struggled to predict both the length and the strength of sunspot cycles because we lack a fundamental understanding of the mechanism that drives the cycle. If our forecast proves correct, we will have evidence that our framework for understanding the sun's internal magnetic machine is on the right path. And that was from the NCAR guy, Scott McIntosh.
Okay.
He's a solar physicist who led the study. So, Sunspot Cycle 25 starts with a bang. What will follow? In McIntosh's previous work, he and his colleagues sketched the outline of a 22-year extended solar cycle using observations of coronal bright points, ephemeral flickers of extreme ultraviolet light in the solar atmosphere. These bright points can be seen marching from the sun's high latitudes to the equator over about 20 years. As they cross the mid-latitudes, the bright points coincide with the emergence of sunspot activity. And there's a really cool diagram here showing that, and I posted that in the Discord. So it's showing the magnetic bands.
Yeah, I see it.
Coming down.
That's really cool.
And coming up from the two opposite poles, and their opposite polarity, and then they collide and mutually annihilate, and then a second band comes down. Okay, so McIntosh believes the bright points mark the travel of magnetic field bands, which wrap around the sun. Hold on a second.
Uh-oh. History shift.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
Proof that we are live and not live. How's it going, History Shift? Hope you're doing well, my
I'm
friend.
on mute.
All right, buddy.
All right, back to the story.
Happens to the best of us.
Yes.
It does. It does.
That's great.
Proof we were being trolled.
Okay, so when the bands from the northern and southern hemispheres, which have oppositely charged magnetic fields, meet at the equator, they mutually annihilate one another, leading to a terminator event. These terminators are crucial markers on the sun's 22-year clock, McIntosh says, because they flag the end of a magnetic cycle along with its corresponding sunspot cycle and act as a trigger for the following magnetic cycle to begin. While one set of oppositely charged bands is about halfway through its migration towards the equatorial meetup, a second set appears at high latitudes and begins its own migration. This is easy to see if you go to EarthSky and .org and look up the story and see the diagram. It's very easy to understand.
Very easy to see.
It's very easy to understand from that. Anyway, while the bands appear at high latitudes at a relatively consistent rate every 11 years, they sometimes slow as they cross the mid-latitudes, which appears to weaken the strength of the upcoming solar cycle. This happens because the slowdown acts to increase the amount of time that the oppositely charged sets of bands overlap and interfere with one another inside the sun. The slowdown extends the current solar cycle by pushing the terminator event out in time. Shifting the terminator out in time has the effect of eating away at the sunspot productivity of the next cycle. So a study co-author, Bob Lehman, is a researcher at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. He said, when we look back over the 270-year-long observational record of terminator events, we see that the longer time between terminators, the weaker the next cycle. And conversely, the shorter time between terminators, the stronger the next solar cycle is. This correlation has been difficult for scientists to see in the past because they have traditionally measured the length of a sunspot cycle from solar minimum to solar minimum, which is defined using an average rather than a precise event. In the new study, the researchers measured from terminator to terminator, which allows for a much greater precision. While terminator events occur approximately every 11 years and mark the beginning and end of the sunspot cycle, the time between terminators can vary by years. For example, Sunspot Cycle 4 began with a terminator in 1786 and ended with a terminator in 1801, an unprecedented 15 years later.
Yeah.
The following cycle, 5, was incredibly weak with a peak amplitude of just 82 sunspots. That cycle would become known as the beginning of the Dalton Grand Minimum. Similarly, Sunspot Cycle 23 began in 1998 and did not end until 2011, 13 years later. Sunspot Cycle 24, which is just ending, was quite weak as well, but it was also quite short, just shy of 10 years long, and that is the basis for the new study's bullish prediction that Sunspot Cycle 25 will be strong. So I don't know if that made sense, but if when you look at the diagram, you see these, imagine you're looking at a circle, right? And you're seeing a red band on top forming at the pole, at the very top. Let's say, it's a circle, but it's supposed to be the sphere of the sun. You're seeing a red spot form at the North Pole and a blue spot form at the South Pole. And they start moving towards each other, towards the equator, and they become bands, right?
Yeah.
Well, as they reach about the mid-latitudes, a new set now flipped over where the blue one's on top and the red one's on bottom, or whatever I said before, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Start moving too. And so like the middle bands will slow down and slowly converge and then annihilate. And that's what stretches out the cycle between and that's what they're calling the terminator event, is those two magnetic polarities equalizing, basically annihilating. And when they slow down, those polar regions kind of get stuck too.
They get stuck.
And then after they annihilate, they can move faster, which makes the sun cycle weak.
Yeah.
So when they move faster, the new ones that are forming at the poles now can get much stronger, and I guess that's the new theory. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So maybe we're in for a serious solar event.
Yeah.
Solar cycle.
So that's what the two different arguments. One is predicting a weak one,
yes,
just based on historical data and some kind of long-term trend. And these guys are like, no, what happened with these terminator bands is showing us that we're going to have a strong one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the weak one is predicted by looking at from minimum to minimum, right?
Yeah.
Solar minimum to solar minimum, and their ability to determine when was the actual depth of the minimum is not precise. They can't really precisely calculate when that exact point of the minimum was.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an average of 11 years, right? So that doesn't give them very good predictive capability.
Yeah.
Because, like you're saying, they have to look through all this historical data and try to see
longer-term trends.
Longer-term trends, yeah. Whereas these guys are looking at,
actual resonant
causation
structures.
of the actual process that they believe is driving the cycles themselves.
Yeah. Large resonant structures in the sun.
Yeah. And I posted that GIF of the...
it looked like it was ringing. It was, it's like...
Yes.
Yeah.
I posted the GIF into Discord, and I was like, I'm pretty sure this is cymatics. So I'm pretty sure that's what explains this.
There's probably a blender in there somewhere.
Yeah, so the blender is in the middle.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Mercury is involved
Mercury's
somehow.
spinning in there somewhere. All right, should I do my alien story or should we go to emails?
I just put this one on because of the space weather news.
Okay.
Right.
I mean,
it's the
we're
space weather news section.
Aliens are in space, right? In the space weather news?
But I mean, you don't talk about your neighbors when you're doing the weather. It's because they're out in the weather.
You talk to your neighbors about the weather, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Well, this is basically the only other. I have one.
You do whatever you want. It's your show, man.
What? I have one other story, but I think I want to wait for Marty to come back to do that one.
Okay,
he sent me that one, and it's about the topic that
Yeah.
So this one though. It is about aliens, but this is all me. This is my story.
All right.
Nobody sent me this. But no, we've talked about this with the exoplanets.
The algorithm sent it to you.
Yes, this is in the exoplanet discussion we talked about. They detected this signal from an exoplanet system.
God dang it! Can we do this in the next segment? Because I have stuff.
Oh, sure.
No, I'm just kidding. Go. I do have stuff about Proxima Centauri, though.
Okay. Well, I don't think this is a very long story either. But this is from Live Science. It's called Alien Hunters Detect Mystery Signal Coming from the Closest Star System. Astronomers hunting for radio signals from alien civilizations have detected an intriguing signal from the direction of Proxima Centauri, the nearest star system to the Sun. The researchers are still preparing a paper on this discovery, and the data has not been made public, according to The Guardian. But the signal is reportedly a narrow beam of 980 megahertz radio waves detected in April and May of 2019 at the Parkes Telescope in Australia. This telescope is part of the $100 million Breakthrough Listen project to hunt for radio signals from technological sources from beyond the solar system. This 980 megahertz signal appeared once and was never detected again. That frequency is important because, as Scientific American points out, that band of radio waves is typically lacking signals from human-made craft and satellites. Breakthrough Listen detects unusual radio signals all the time between earthly sources, the sun's natural radio output, and natural sources beyond the solar system. There are a lot of radio waves bouncing around out there, but this signal appears to have come directly from the Proxima Centauri system, just 4.2 light years from Earth. And even more tantalizing, this signal reportedly shifted slightly while it was being observed in a way that resembled the shift caused by the movement of a planet. Proxima Centauri has one known rocky world 17% larger than Earth and one known gas giant. So The Guardian quoted an unnamed source with apparent access to the data on this signal as saying, "It is the first serious candidate for an alien communication since the WOW signal," which is a famous radio signal detected in 1977 that also resembled a techno signature. But The Guardian cautioned that this signal is likely to have a mundane origin as well. Such more mundane sources include a comet or its hydrogen cloud, which also could explain the WOW signal. Penn State University's Sophia Sheik, who led the analysis of the signal for the Breakthrough Listen, voiced her excitement about it. "It is the most exciting signal that we've found in the Breakthrough Listen project because we haven't had a signal jump through this many of our filters before," she told Scientific American, adding that the signal is now being referred to as Breakthrough Listen Candidate 1, or BLC1. An inherent challenge in searching for alien communications is that no one knows how aliens might communicate. And no one knows all the potential natural sources of radio waves in the universe. So when signals arrive that seem even plausibly technological and don't come with easy natural explanations, it's tempting to make the jump to aliens. So far, no data on this signal is public, and it's likely that even when it does become public, there will be no conclusive answers. That's what happened with the WOW signal, after all. So I think that's really interesting. And yeah, the automatic assumption is that it's either natural phenomena or it's some kind of... They picked up something that actually originates from Earth. But the more that comes out about this information, the less it looks like that's possible. At least the Earth part. The more it looks like it really did originate from that system. The other problem with it is that it's non-recurring. So... for example, if aliens somewhere else were looking back at our system, they would not see non-recurring signals because we are sending out radio signals all the time. So it's strange to get a non-recurring signal and think it's a technological one, but it could be. It could be signs of a technological civilization or something else weird and natural.
Yeah, so I also had a story, and this is also from earthsky.org, about that, and I think it's referencing the story that you're talking about.
Okay.
About the WOW signal and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff. But the thing that I found most interesting is right here. Let's see.
What time are we at, by the way? We didn't
None of
start
your
the
business.
timer. Okay.
Another point to note is that the signal apparently came from the direction of Proxima Centauri, but it's not a slam dunk that the star really is the source. It could also have been a source within the 16 arc minute which is 1/60th of a degree, beam width of the telescope that happened to be near Proxima Centauri in the sky from our vantage point. It also appears to be a simple signal with no modulation, just a single tone. Yet, for all intents and purposes, it's just a tone, just one note. It has absolutely no additional features that we can discern at this point, so it's not a complex waveform. Very simple sine wave.
Right.
The signal does drift, as might be expected, for a signal from an orbiting planet, but it is in the opposite direction of what would normally be expected. We would expect the signal to be going down in frequency like a trombone. What we see instead is like a slide whistle, the frequency goes up.
Yeah.
I don't know why they use those two descriptors.
Right, 'cause a trombone can definitely go up.
And a slide whistle can go
down. Yeah. It's
but the point is
non-musician journalist.
Okay, this is this is the Doppler effect.
Yeah.
So if the thing
frequency's going up,
the thing's making the sound coming towards you, if it's accelerating towards you, it's going to be going up.
Yeah.
If it's accelerating going away from you, it's going to be going down. So based on the idea of dark energy and all this kind of expanding universe, anything that's a significant distance away from Earth should have a Doppler shift down, a red shift. A lowering of the frequency.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting that there's this perfect, sine wave type, a single note, because I don't know. It's really strange. It's not noise. It's not.
Yeah.
It's something very precise.
Yeah.
And it's going up, which is suggesting acceleration towards us. So that's what I thought.
It's blue shifted.
So what all of this means exactly isn't clear yet. Let's see what are they saying? And some of these people they've got these people discussing it. The motion of the Parkes telescope should impart a negative drift rate, but the one they see is positive, implying that the transmitter, if it is extraterrestrial, is not correcting for its own acceleration. The positive drift rate, actually, to me, and this is another person, or no, I guess this is Jason Wright, argues in favor of it being extrasolar technology because that implies it is significantly accelerating with respect to the barycentric frame. So, I don't know, it's some interesting stuff.
It's on its way here, basically.
The Doppler drift due to any planet around Proxima would probably be dominated by its rotation, not its orbital motion, except if Proxima B is tidally locked. You can figure that one out. So they're just discussing how does it get this Doppler shift?
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was really cool.
So they're saying that the orbit would not blue shift it significantly.
Right.
Even if it was swinging around the sun towards us, there would not be a significant blue shift. That any blue shift we should see would be based on the spinning, the rotation of the planet, unless the planet was tidally locked, which would mean that you would never see any because it's tidally locked means it orbits. It
so
rotates
its spin
once.
is incredibly just as slow as its orbit.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. So it's very interesting.
So it must be a ship coming towards us.
That's exactly what it is. Watcher, your family is returning.
And the single note sounds like a ping. To me,
exactly.
Right? You send it out.
Yeah.
Everything bounces back. You're like, all right, there's the Earth.
Yeah.
That's where
basically they were like,
send the bombs.
Should we send them a trombone? And they were like, no, let's send them a slide whistle. Okay.
What was that about correcting for their...
Yeah, he was saying that the
aliens aren't correcting for their own motion.
Yes, that's right.
Are we doing that? Is that what he's trying to say?
I think that's what he's saying. That was the
implication
idea.
Is that we're correcting for our motion?
The idea that I got is like our space telescopes and stuff correct for their own motion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
When they're looking at something and they're flying around the planet.
Yeah, they have to do that for sure.
They're correcting for their own motion.
Yes, but they're also not. Those are passive sensors.
I know, but
do we correct for our own motion when we're sending signals? Is the question. In other words,
if you're going to send if you're going to send a radio transmission to to the space station, you better correct. Otherwise, you'll be like, "Hey guys, is everything going all right up there?"
There's got to be a blue shift.
I don't know.
Or he's saying that if we were to, for example, send a signal to a planet or a ship orbiting a different star, we would certainly correct. In that case,
Yeah.
because the distances are appreciable and the shifting would be appreciable, right? You could detect it. But
I don't know what he means, but
well, I'm just trying to speculate here. Like, yes, if you were in a ship around,
I think what they're
Proxima
saying
Centauri
is what they're saying is that if you were getting a signal from a planet from far away,
yeah,
the expected Doppler shift would be down. Right? So this
Okay.
is not that's what they're kind of saying. Right?
the expected shift would be down.
Yeah, and so they're seeing this shift going up and they're like, "Whoa, that's weird." And then I think the other guy was just he was saying, "Yeah, they're
not-
talking about the possibility of it being aliens,"
Yeah.
and he's saying, "Yeah, they didn't correct for their own acceleration."
Right.
Yeah.
Which is towards us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on.
Yeah.
All right.
Because that's because you don't expect a blue shifted signal coming from that star either. Like he's right, you know, if they're right about
Exactly.
it. So that's the question.
And they're arguing about it being a planet because the planet is orbiting the star, but they're like, nah, you would notice it from the planet's rotation, but Proxima Centauri or whatever is tidally locked.
If I think they said if it's tidally locked, it would. I don't
Yeah.
think they know if it is. Do they have that data?
Yeah, he does say that, except if Proxima B
Yeah.
is tidally locked.
Right.
You could figure that one out.
Yeah. So basically, he was saying there that if we are seeing a blue shift, the blue shifted signal, and if it comes from the planet, it's from that planet's rotation, not its orbit.
Okay. That's probably what he's meaning.
Yeah.
It was weird. They threw in a Twitter conversation in the middle of the story.
Yeah, I see.
Between Jason Wright and some other people.
Yeah.
His responses to other people.
Well, it was a good story.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
First segment done.
Flawless segment.
In the
completed.
can. Last first segment of 2020.
Oh, man.
I'm going to cry? All right. We'll be right back for segment 2, last segment 2 of 2020. Snacks!
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, episode 180, last sode of the year 2020, and last second segment of the year.
That's right.
And yeah, that's all I got. We're going to do some listener communications. We got more news stories, and some dark maza.
Astrophysics. Yep. All right. Well, we have a whole bunch of emails. I've been collecting these, and most of them are very shiny. So we need to do these on the show. So here we go. First one is called Where You Need to Go Next from Tom. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I hope this finds you and yours well in these strange times. I've been mostly enjoying your podcast for the last long time, and I've been giving some very serious thought to where you need to go next in order to traverse to the next level of learning stuff, and you can thank me later. I know it's important to look at lots of stuff, but you know, aliens, hairy humanoids, and ghosts, there's probably only 7 or 8 folks out there that really care, and I'm glad we agree on this. So you need to come to Ireland. Because apart from the fairies, which I can only apologize for in advance, we've got all the proper stuff here to keep ancient civilization geeks and drumlin lovers happy for at least 2 complete Yuga cycles. Newgrange, round towers that are actually antennas, dolmens, and more drumlins than you can shake a very shaky stick at. And it's a bit of a no-brainer. So you're welcome. I'm sure there's some way I can help to get you started, so don't be strangers. Anyway, best wishes to you and those you love for a nice Christmas and a pleasant new year, from Tom.
All right, man. I'm totally down.
Yeah. Give me a plane ticket and I'm coming. I'll be there. I'll show up.
I will expect beer.
But yeah,
beers and plane tickets. That's all we lack.
Beers and plane tickets.
Beer.
All right, this one's called Post Egypt Update from Kevin. He says, "Hey, Russ and Kyle, thanks for mentioning me on the pod. A bunch of people on the trip came and told me about it. I tried to make snakes there, but we'll see how many were actually bitten. Egypt was awesome. Only could have been better if you guys were there with an actual effing geologist. I became fascinated with the Holy of Holies, or Holies of Holies. Each one we visited was weird and intriguing for different reasons. Having just finished episode 25, where you talk about the low-hanging fruit of the giant graves under the rock piles in the Northeast, I am relieved to know that past Snake Bros likely haven't gotten there yet because present Snake Bros haven't been gladded by the MIB. I think you guys are really close on a lot of stuff, but still completely wrong on everything. Let me catch up and see. Cheers and snakes from Kevin." Yeah, I'm sure that Egypt trip was awesome, man.
Oh, man.
Glad you had a good time. And yeah, I remember seeing you talking about the inner sanctums, the holies of holies of these various temples you guys went to. And I think Ben and Jimmy are now starting to post their videos on some of the stuff. So
cool.
Need to watch that stuff.
Yep.
Okay, so Ian says that the last email he sent to us was when he was very toasted. But on this one, he sends a couple of links, and he asks for a roundtable with us, Ben from Uncharted X, Matt from Ancient Architects, and the French Snake Bro. I don't know who that is. I didn't know there was a French Snake Bro. But yeah, he says, "Get the French fella on the show, please," from Ian. All right, Ian, we'll look into that. I'll look up the French guy and see if I can figure out who he is. From Sarah, this is called Shrunken Heads. "Hi, Snake Bros. It is me again, still working my way through your podcast with my snake spouse. My husband, Jay Snake, has an ever-growing list of books that he wants to buy now on your recommendation. We loved the Giza power plant episodes. I have to admit, I hadn't really given much thought to the pyramids since at least high school, except for always using the phrase, 'that's the power of the pyramids,' when moving heavy things around using pipes or logs as rollers. Who knew how wrong I was? I had to look the pyramids up on Google Maps to see how they're all situated, and I paused to look at some pictures of the Sphinx. Is it just me, or is that head way too small for that body?"
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I do agree with that. Says, "See below for a couple of screenshots I took for comparison to the Zika-inflicted Sphinx and proportional lion in a Sphinx pose." Yeah. "Embarrassing," she says. And also this because snakes, and there's a picture of a snake there. And she says, "P.S. I forgot to say happy solstice."
Happy solstice.
Thanks, Sarah. But yeah, I agree. The Sphinx head looks repurposed. And it may not have been a lion originally at all. It could have been, some people think it was Anubis. Possibly it was a lion with an actual lion head facing Leo. And then later somebody carved the remnants, the very eroded remnants of the head into a face. And that's why it's so small compared to the body. And the idea is that it may have been that because the Sphinx usually stays buried in sand up to its neck for most of the time. So it's possible that was just the head part was sticking out of the dirt, out of the sand, and somebody carved it into a face with having no idea that there was the entire body and enclosure below it. And once it was uncovered, it became clear that whoops. Oh. Okay, this one's from Eli. Says, "First of all, I love the show. I initially came to your podcast following Randall Carlson after I listened to a few you brought up UFO infos with Marty. One thing I was wondering is, you all mentioned a documentary that Jacques Vallée was a part of, and I'm wondering is that a different one than The Phenomenon? Yes, the one that we were talking about with Marty specifically is called Witness of Another World. That also has Jacques Vallée in it. So, but you're right, The Phenomenon is good. Kyle and I got that and watched it. Very good.
Yeah.
So he says that one is pretty decent, but here is the meat of my inquiry. Is there a reputable book or study on interactions that one may believe may be related? So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking there, but if you're asking if there is
like encounters,
okay, so a book on studies on interactions that may be related to UFO stuff, yes. Are they reputable? No. There is no such thing as a quote-unquote reputable book on UFOs, according to the mainstream, right? Well, at least that's the way it has been for a long time. Maybe now that's changing. But there's lots of great books. So I would recommend anything by Jacques Vallée, for example. He's written a lot of books. I would say that Passport to Magonia changed my life, Messengers of Deception. He's recently been publishing his journals that he kept throughout a lot of the years of his working with Blue Book and everything. Lots of interesting stuff in that because he was just basically taking down his daily thoughts on what was happening. So you learn a lot of things about not only the phenomenon itself and what he was looking at, but also his interactions with all these weird and interesting people, including people in and out of the government institutions that were dealing with this kind of stuff. So I'd definitely look up the books by Jacques Vallée. And he's also published it. There's a new one that they published called, I can never remember the name of it, but it's looking at UFO sightings or UFO-like sightings throughout history. I'll have to look the name of that one up. Okay. This one's from Logan. He says, "Hey, Serpentine brothers. Several years ago, a guy named Crow777 on YouTube, who posted an amazing video of captures through his telescope, had caught several strange UFOs and other anomalies. One thing he filmed really intrigued me. While videoing the moon, he caught what appeared to be some sort of double shockwave or something that appeared to traverse the moon's entire surface. He swears up and down that it is local to the moon and goes through various explanations and video clips that quote-unquote prove this. Several other people started catching this as well on other YouTube channels, and even some people that didn't know they had caught it. According to modern mainstream science, the moon has no atmosphere or very, very little of one, so some kind of atmospheric phenomenon on the moon seems unlikely. It seems that at the time the lunar wave was being captured was right before the whole flat Earth ridiculousness started rolling in all over YouTube. Crow777 ended up turning into a flat earther and then started a way off the deep end's conspiracy theory podcast, and shortly after this I stopped visiting his channel. He also talked about a Russian scientist named Hatibo. He wrote stuff about Earth being a prison planet and a race of spiders that uses human bodies. Really crazy stuff, but definitely entertaining. Not sure if it was like science fiction or what, but it would make one hell of a book. Anyway, just curious if you guys have ever seen the clips and what your thoughts are. All of the Velikovsky stuff reminded me of the lunar wave and the Russian scientist guy, and thought I would ask. I love you guys and eagerly await every episode with salivating ears. Off topic, I know you're a gamer, Russ. Play Demon's Souls until they fix Cyberpunk. Thanks for the advice, buddy. Kyle and Laura for Christmas gave me a Steam gift card, and I was like, I'm going to buy Cyberpunk with this. But I see a lot of people are saying it's broken, so maybe I'll wait.
I actually read a news story about how broken it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could have come to me for advice. And, I could have told you not to get it.
Okay.
But I wouldn't have known to tell you to get Demon's Souls.
Demon's Souls. Yeah. So the other thing, Logan, I looked at the link you provided, and I have to say that my first thought is that he was looking at an earthly atmospheric phenomena passing across the moon. In other words, he's sitting there with his telescope and he's looking up at the moon and he sees some kind of wave-looking thing go across the moon, and it's because something's happening in our atmosphere, not the moon's atmosphere or on the surface of the moon. That's also the mainstream explanation, so I'm sure that makes me a huge scriptard. But I don't think. I mean, I think that the number one, that it's almost impossible to know what it really was. Number two, the most likely thing to me seems that it was something in our atmosphere. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. But I read that whole thing you sent. And you're right. It gets completely insane. I mean, he's like, the guy's referring to it as the lunar moon and the solar sun. And I'm like, why are you using both of those terms every time? The lunar moon and the solar sun, which is actually a planet. It's not a sun. And the lunar moon is actually running the entire solar system using holograms or something. But anyway, it also is responsible for crop circles. So, yeah.
I think I've seen the solar sun guy in some obscure chat rooms.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lunar moon.
Giant posts with
Solar sun.
solar sun in all caps.
Anyway, I don't know about all that other stuff because it got nuts. But in terms of that lunar wave that was recorded and was caught on video through the telescope and other people caught it too, it seems to me like it was atmospheric phenomena. I don't know. I agree that it doesn't seem likely for it to have been a lunar atmospheric phenomena because the moon does have some atmosphere, but it's negligible. You know, there is gas around the moon. It's basically a vacuum.
Could have been a giant shock wave and you were seeing the dust, the lunar regolith.
It could have been a shock wave from an impact. Yeah.
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 Going across and then the dust would be being stirred up by the wavefront.
Exactly.
And so it would look like an atmospheric thing, but it's a shock wave.
Yeah. That's right. All right, so Marty
just scriptard the script.
Marty is posting, what was the other one called? He's posting some books here for the other guy who asked for advice on books. Wonders in the Sky is the one by Jacques Vallée and Chris Aubeck, The Unexplained Aerial Objects from Antiquity to Modern Times. That's a fantastic book full of all kinds of accounts that they categorize. And then he also posted a book called Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligences, Volume 1. So, two other excellent books. And Marty will be coming on again soon for part 4, the UFO topic. So he can probably also give more book recommendations then. But yeah, lunar wave. Don't know. Lunar moon.
It was probably cymatics.
All right. This one is called Rambling of Thoughts About Findings from Josh. And he says, hello, Snake Bros. Warning, this is a long one. Thanks to you guys, I have found a new hobby that seems to be somewhat meaningful. Let's start from the beginning. After reading America Before and finding out about chambers in the northeast of the USA, I searched for ancient Vermont and stumbled upon a YouTube video from you guys about your most recent trip to Vermont. After listening to that episode, I started to ask around to local Vermonters about the stone structures you guys visited. I was given the location of one of these sites in South Woodstock, Vermont, where I visited a stone chamber that blew my mind with the size of the stones used in the construction of the chamber.
Awesome. Wow.
After visiting that location, I started to look on the state of Vermont LiDAR map to find other chambers like that one to visit. I started the search by looking at known native sites. One location was a Paleo-Indian site dating back to 12,000 years ago. On the LiDAR map, there were 3 unusual landforms. After seeing these landforms, I investigated and found an oddly buried stone wall that zigzagged around the base of the landforms. And after documenting these findings, I shared them with the state archaeologist and was told that the landforms did seem unusual and that they would visit the site once they are back in the area. Insert skeleton at panic table meme. Curiosity took hold and the research began to see if there were other sites in this area. Started by using the LiDAR map to find areas that looked interesting and visiting them and talking to the locals if anything of interest was in the area. Thankfully, many people I spoke with allowed me to look on their land, as well as gave me tips and areas to look at. After a while, the amount of places I was looking at became a little too overwhelming, so I reached out to some experts and groups for help to understand what it was that I was looking at. With the support of others that have been studying this far longer than I was able to come up with a theory of what could have been happening at the time these stone structures were built. The theory. While researching the area and with the help of the site map from NERA, or the New England Antiquities Research Association, I was able to see a pattern of the landforms and stone structures. They are all around 800 feet or higher in elevation, and they were all a good distance from the Connecticut River Valley. Started to look into this more in depth and found that on both sides of the river in New Hampshire and Vermont, stone structures show up a good distance away from the river. There is a distinct difference between the landscapes of areas that have stone structures and areas that do not. The areas that have walls are rocky and mountainous that are poor for agricultural uses, while areas that didn't have stone structures are more rolling, gentle hills that have rich soils that are currently used for agricultural purposes. I grew up in New England and was taught that the stoneworks in this area were built by farmers, and that mostly this is true. But what I have been finding wasn't making sense. Why would there be stonework for farmland where the land is poor for farming, while the land that is still being used for farmland doesn't have any stonework? Looking into the history of the landscape, I learned about glacial Lake Hitchcock that formed approximately 15,000 years ago in the late Pleistocene epoch.
Yes.
And existed for approximately 3,000 years. Later, it became Lake Upton, which I'm having more difficulty finding information about and waiting to hear back from the state geologist regarding this. Learning about the lakes were once in the areas of the rich farmlands makes sense. It could be possible there is a lack of stonework in that area due to the soil deposits of the lakes. What didn't make sense is why is there so much stonework after what appears to be the shoreline of these ancient lakes? Or maybe he means above.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
That is the question. The lake is gone, so now let's build stuff above the shoreline.
Right. Yeah.
No.
From the research I have gathered, I learned that when Lake Hitchcock was there, so was the Champlain Sea, and the land I have been searching on was a natural corridor between the two bodies of water. As well, the land at that time was much lower in elevation due to the weight of the glaciers, and it was a tundra landscape. People were here during this time, and sites have been found around the state that prove this. I thought maybe the people at that time could have made the stonework in the area, but that would be hard to prove, and there aren't really other sites like that dating so far back. Then I read an article about a 10,000-year-old site that is underwater at the Straits of Mackinac in Michigan and saw a presentation done by an archaeologist about submerged paleoculture landscapes. Another presentation done by the state of Vermont mentioned in Vermont the glacial lakes and inland seas were due to the weight of the glaciers. Once the land rebounded from the weight, the seas and the lakes went away, meaning that unlike many areas that once held these ancient populations that are now under the waves, Vermont rose above them. Large bodies of water typically mean large populations of people. In the case of the stonework I have been researching, it would seem a large population would be necessary to complete it. The size of the stones and the amount of work needed to complete everything in the area either took years upon years and/or a population that could handle the amount of work needed to complete the stone. So, could it be possible that during the era of when the area was an inland sea with a vast network of natural waterways connecting the oceans, or to the oceans, there was a large enough population to take on these constructions? When the water went away, the population followed it, which is why you have coastal states that are able to recognize native sites, because when the Europeans arrived there was a stable enough population in the area to say, yes, we made these. While in Vermont, by the time the Europeans arrived, the small population that the land could support was even smaller due to death from disease, and therefore there weren't enough natives here to say what they have or haven't created. To sum up this ramble of thoughts, the stoneworks along the Connecticut River Valley could possibly be from 12 to 10,000 years old and were maintained by the native populations for thousands of years until they died. Next year, I plan on exploring more of the state to see if the stonework and shoreline of the Champlain Sea have the same distinctive line as Lake Hitchcock. Or this could all be done by colonial settlers and I'm on a wild goose chase. Either way, I will be out there looking for answers. Snacks! From Josh.
Oh my God, that is awesome, dude. That is really badass. And
Yeah.
next time we're up there, you need to take us to some sites, bro.
Yeah. I mean, we have so many New England snakes now. The next time we go up there, and we
do a big meetup.
Yeah, we could do a huge meetup. It would be so much fun.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That is so cool. And great work. Holy crap.
Yeah, man. It's just fantastic. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think you said everything. All I can say is keep going.
Yeah.
It's great. And keep us updated. All right. This one is from Tom, a different Tom, I think. Let me make sure. I don't know. Okay. He says, to the Snake Bros, kind of. And I'm detecting some cosmographia.
Oh.
Hey guys, I apologize in advance for the length of this, and I appreciate your time in reading this. I also apologize for sending this to this mailbox. I did so intentionally because after the past several episodes, namely last week, it seems as if Brad has a short fuse, and I would rather you use your judgment as to whether or not you'd show him this attached collage I produced, much less if he'd ever produce it if he intercepted it via the Cosmographia email. Brad has a short fuse. It's very short, you know? And yeah, I also get the Cosmographia email. So if you just sent it there, I could have intercepted it. But yes, Brad does get mad sometimes.
Does he?
No, it's never happened. So Tom says, yes, I love your podcast too, but this is regarding your other project. As far as Cosmographia, absolutely love the show. You're a great crew that's truly fun to listen to and or watch. The banter, running jokes, the subtlety of how you give each other shit is absolutely priceless. Not only is it a great way to do a podcast, but it's a great way to teach. And you're all teaching. Yes, Randall is the star, but follow-up questions and input from Brad and the Snake Bros is every bit as valuable, and even Silent Mike throws in something on the table at times, LOL. Take pride in knowing that keeping things light is a tremendously effective tool, and does not at all take away from the fact that it is uber informative and people are learning so much as a result. Well, thank you, man.
Man, thanks. Really appreciate that.
Yeah. As for what I've come to realize, I refer to the true gravity of what has happened here in Wisconsin. It is fascinating that something I've always thought to be so intriguing in my home state is so much bigger than I ever thought. I grew up just south of the Kettle Moraine State Forest Southern Unit, which is just south of Lake Winnebago, and precisely where my grandfather built a cabin in the late 1960s. And as a result, I grew up climbing Dundee Mountain, the largest something in the Kettle Moraine, and I believe one of the largest in North America. Climbing to Parnell Tower in all seasons throughout the year to observe the topography, fishing and swimming the countless lakes within close proximity to each other, walking endlessly throughout the area, navigating the Ice Age trails, and tons more. But I had no idea what I wasn't seeing until Randall enlightened me. Frankly, it's just pretty damn cool to learn about this all, and it's so far beyond anything I've ever imagined. I also had no idea that drumlins were any bigger than a small, odd-shaped hill dotted here and there. Nor did I understand just how incredibly expansive all of this truly is. Looking at the maps of Wisconsin with the map software Randall utilizes helped me to revisit all of that with a very different eye. And wow, I'm also attaching a few of the relevant links to the aforementioned places for you guys to explore in case you ever get up here. As an aside, my God, although their disciplines differ by miles, the library in RC's head, the breadth, the vast expanse of Randall's knowledge, and his ability to tap into that knowledge parallels that of the late Christopher Hitchens. It's pretty impressive, but I digress. I can't wait each week, or every 3 weeks sometimes, for the show to be released. This mission needs to continue, and when I find myself in a better position financially, I will undoubtedly support the show and its mission. Honestly, no offense is intended at all, and I figured since you seem to have a great sense of humor, I'd enlighten you as to what runs through my damn mind every time I watch these podcasts on YouTube. And maybe you get a kick out of it. This especially applies to those early Russ and Kyle Shiny Guys episodes, and the backgrounds Randall and Bradley used that would clash, and Brad and Randall being outlined and coming out of the screen like I'm watching some kind of 3D movie, and at times feeling like I was having an intense LSD flashback or peeking on some high-quality psilocybin. So he says, what I see clockwise from top left, and God is Randall, top left. Abe, I don't know who these people are. Abe Sapien, Stephen Root, and Ronnie Van Zant and Tony Romo. I don't know who any of those people are except for God, and that's hilarious that you think Randall's God. And then your links, bro, are what made the email really long.
Holy crap. Links failed.
Failed link. It's 15 feet of alphanumeric character that I can't open. So, but glad you enjoy the show.
Appreciate the links.
Yeah. Okay. What time we got? Where are we at? What's going on here?
We're right here.
Oh, we're right there.
The halfway point.
I got one short one here.
Okay.
And this is really pertinent to what we're doing right now. This is called Listener Communication Shows from Eric. He says, hey, Russ and Kyle. Or hail. Really enjoyed the latest sode as always, but for whatever reason, during the listener communications part of the episode, I came to the realization of how much I really enjoy those portions of the show. The mammals emails brought some very interesting questions to the table, and the laid-back conversations the emails get out of you guys is when, in my opinion, the best thing about your podcast. You can tell you guys really enjoy getting those types of emails from your listeners, so I had a thought. If you were wanting to do more emails but can't with the amount you're receiving nowadays, why not, every once in a while, dedicate an episode to strictly listener emails? The episode doesn't have to be a regular occurrence, just when you get enough emails that sparks interesting conversations between two snakes and a watcher/guest. Could allow for a multitude of topics and great laid-back conversations. Just an idea. By no means a demand. LOL. Godspeed and snakes!
Of course, it's a great idea.
Of course, it's a good idea. Yeah, we've talked about that same thing. So,
yep. When the emails started piling up, it was like, hey, man, like this. Really, the emails are one of my favorite parts of the show, too.
Yeah. The only thing about the emails is they're tough for brand new listeners, right? They don't understand the jokes. They don't get the context. So we're juggling this idea of like, do we keep the main, shows with a big topic or a main guest without any emails in it and just move all of the email reading to their own separate episodes? So this is the kind of thing I'm juggling in my mind. Like, how do I want to do this? Because I love the emails and I also want them to... Laura. Sorry, I'm being trolled. Anyway, I love the emails and I want the listeners to be in on every show's conversation, and that's part of reading the emails on every show. But yes, the amount that we're getting at this point means that even if we do keep reading a couple of emails on every episode, eventually we're going to have to do a listener communications episode to catch up.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Which is what we're doing right now. So,
and then, the haters can skip those episodes.
Yeah.
Until they like them, and then they come back and listen to them.
Yeah, that's right.
If they want. But yeah, listener communications is what this show is all about.
That's right.
Honestly, like we've said many times before, we've had these conversations with each other for a long time. And then, of course, whenever we threw parties and people would come over, we'd start talking about all this same stuff to everybody that would listen, and then everybody would jump in, and it was always great getting other people's takes on the ideas, and they just make for, it's just great. Just great hanging out, talking about the mysteries of the universe, and so that's what we're going to be doing on the first segment of every show. GFY and GTFO.
It's just the stick to the pyramids crowd that gets mad about it, right? And the new listeners that don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, start your workout next show. Snakes!
Ladies and gentlemen, for the second hour, third segment, Brothers of the Serpent podcast, doing listener communications, news stories, possibly some astrophysics, and being trolled relentlessly by the Discord. So, if you want to troll us in future not live shows, join the Discord. It's always It's always fun, and it's difficult to ignore because we have the Discord up on the screen, on the studio screen in front of us, and the trolling is powerful, and it's hard to ignore it. It takes a lot of concentration to completely ignore the trolls. Okay, so we're continuing here with the emails. This one is from Nick. Yeah, this is from Nick. The guy who said we totally didn't understand evolution.
Evolution Nick.
This is Evolution Nick.
Yes.
Yeah, he says, Merry Christmas, Snake Bros. He says, hello again, Snake Bros. Just a quick email to wish you both and the Snake Wife and the Snake family and the Snake friends and the Snake cats and everything else snaky a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I wish you all the best for this time in 2021, and thank you for the joy you've brought me this year. I used to listen to some other podcasts on other topics, but, no time now. Being British but having a Czech wife and family, and with the Czechs celebrating Christmas in the evening of the 24th, means we get 2 Christmases every year, and we love it. We're about to sit down and have a semi-traditional Czech Christmas dinner of something I can't pronounce, and potato salad. The traditional is carp. Not even my wife wants that. Before something else that I can't pronounce, roughly translated as baby Jesus. This magically deposits some presents under the tree. Tomorrow, well, you know all about what happens tomorrow. But I love this time of year, and I love knowing its roots go way back further than we can probably guess. It's not about some bearded dude's birthday. At least it wasn't. It's more ancient and more important and more real than that. And that gives me a profound sense of something, a connection to our forgotten past. One last thought that's been on my mind for a while, the custodians of knowledge you often discuss. Who are these people? How do they recruit today, and how can you become one? Can you imagine being one of these people with knowledge to keep and pass down, but perhaps unable to share any of it? Amazing and yet hugely frustrating at the same time. Also, is Randall secretly actually one of those guys? Thanks for everything you do, and again, have a very Merry Christmas. Much love, your biological robot, Nick. P.S. I realized recently that I've become snake-like in an unexpected way due to the different ways our two cultures shorten mathematics. Every time you say math, I say s. So, snakes! Yes, because maths is how they say it across the pond. Maths. So now we have Roddy the Mammal and biological robot Nick.
Yes. Yes. That's great.
Thanks, Nick. That was a great email. Sorry I couldn't read all the things. One of them is he says it's schnitzel, basically. But yeah, I wouldn't even try to pronounce those things.
But yeah, I think, I don't know this, of course. I can't know it, but my thought is that the Masonic tradition carries on that knowledge, but unbeknownst to most Masons, even.
Yeah.
But that's very similar to the way we carry on the traditions of all these religions that we have, which are full of these symbols, and people are carrying on that symbolism, passing it down, without knowing truly what it was intended to be, what it was intended to mean by the people who created it in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like that, we talk about that as a technology on the show. Like, who came up with this idea of carrying on this knowledge through symbolism and through ritual, where the knowledge is hidden, but it has a meme effect where people see it and kind of get it stuck in their head and adopt it and pass it on. And but it's also has a simple story on the surface, but it has a much deeper meaning, that's hidden. I think Randall is one of those people.
Yes.
And I think he knows it, but I think that it's not like you have to keep it secret. I think that Randall is sharing it.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, there's definitely stuff that he can't share, right? We've come across that. Or that he is not prepared to share, or that he doesn't feel it is time to share. Whether he can't, I don't know. But
yeah, but the idea I get is that the symbolism and all of that stuff already is out there everywhere in front of everyone.
Yes, that's right.
And so he's like, look at this, look at this, look at this.
Yeah, that's right.
Trying to lead you down the rabbit hole.
And that's
because it's about self-discovery.
Yeah, and that's
the path of the initiate. You have to initiate yourself.
Yeah. You have to walk the path. You're not going to just have this stuff handed to you by the people who know it. At least not the teachers who teach it properly. Because in some ways, to me, it appears that half. Well, I don't know the percentage, but I would say, somewhere around half or maybe even more of the purpose of the path of discovery is what that taking that path does to you and your mind. That won't happen if they just hand you all the answers.
Right.
Because maybe the better way to say it is half of the answer is what happens to your mind in trying to find the answer.
Yeah. And I also don't think that any one person really knows all the answers exactly, right?
Yeah.
And maybe the people that created the knowledge also don't know all the answers, but they're giving you as much as they knew.
Yeah.
In the best way that they could think of to do it. And so it's up to a lot of interpretation, but it looks like from those things that they can actually be discovered through those things, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And people can be right. And there's a lot of people that think a lot of different things. And probably most of them are wrong.
But do you
like us?
Yeah. Do you think that there are things that are absolutely hidden? That are
by a giant global organization? I don't know. That seems like it would be pretty hard.
Well, they don't have to be giant, but they could be global.
Yeah, I mean,
five guys
that live in different places
can be a global organization.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Not the restaurant. I'm just saying that 5 people can be.
I do think that there are aspects of it that are hidden on purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
But my point is that hiding the method is different than hiding the actual information, because that is really hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
So it's obvious that the Masons keep the method secret.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
But the information, the symbolism, all of that stuff is everywhere.
Yeah. So that's okay. So part of the purpose of a good encryption is that you don't have to hide it.
Yes. Right.
I can hand you an open letter and if it's encrypted well, you could copy it 1,000,000 times before you deliver it to the person you're supposed to deliver to, and then give those 1,000,000 copies out to all these people. And if they can't decrypt it, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
Only the guy who I sent you to take it to can decrypt it because he has the key. That's the method. Right? So yeah, the symbols are everywhere, but if they're encrypted and the decryption method is hidden, then you've hidden the meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the symbols are all in plain sight.
Right. And then it wouldn't take in other words, you can have giant global organizations that are passing on all the information.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is easy to do.
Yeah.
And they can't really give away the secrets.
That's right.
But you can have a small group that has the encryption key.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So who has the encryption key? I don't know. I tend to believe that you can discover the encryption key on your own.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, it seems like the decryption keys are contained in the way the universe works.
Yeah.
But maybe not. I don't know. It's possible that the data that is contained in the encrypted stuff was encrypted using things about how the universe works. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can look at how the universe works and then decrypt that data. I don't know if it works both ways.
Yeah. I don't either. I don't have much to say.
Just mystery not solved.
Mystery not solved.
Same mystery.
That's right. We're wondering all those things too, buddy. That's basically what we're saying.
Thanks for the email.
Yeah.
And a Merry
Good to
Christmas.
hear from you,
Yeah.
bud.
Yep. Sorry he couldn't be here tonight. He came in the chats and he was like, well, that's too late for me.
Must go hibernate.
Yeah. If the Earth was flat, it would still be daytime for him, but it's not.
Oh.
Round Earth in a flat universe. Okay. So Roddy just sends a holiday greeting and a Merry Christmas to the entire Snake Clan and the whole Snake Force. So Merry Christmas to all you guys from Roddy the Mammal. Okay. This one is from Gary. I think this is the last long one. This is called Paradoxical Undressing Statement Corrections from Gary. Snake Bros. While listening to you on Soraya's podcast, Where Did the Road Go?, I just wanted to make several corrections or observations I heard being made by someone regarding the cases you discussed on the show. Firstly, I, like you, feel that there are a mix of cases where nowhere near enough data is included in some cases to be able to make a rational conclusion.
Wait, is this a compliment sandwich?
Maybe. However, on other cases, there are facts and details that make the cases just over the edge freaking weird. One, the doctor that stated paradoxical undressing stated that there are hikers on Everest who take their clothes off. I don't believe it's realistic for the doctor to make the statement that finding hikers with a missing glove or shoe or hat or coat, etc., in the category of paradoxical undressing, those articles of unsecured accessory dress items could have been blown off by the wind or rain, etc. There's a huge difference between someone taking their clothes off or finding a glove or shoes or other singular piece or article of human outerwear.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Agreed.
2, in the case of the lady yoga instructor that became lost in Hawaii, you said, it is an island. Pick a direction and keep walking and you'll find the ocean. This is my thought too. However, there is one unique feature on those islands that you may consider concerning getting lost on those islands. I think you'll may be unaware that there are vast areas called dried lava fields out on a few of the Hawaiian islands. The view is unchanging to humans, and they continue for 40 to 50 miles in every direction. When you get out of your car and look around, there are no landmarks, no trees, nothing a human can use to mark directions. The view is related to how it appears looking out across Antarctica or in the middle of a desert. You should check a little 411 out on these lava fields. There's remnants of the My Civilization, as talked about by the musician that wrote the song Wipeout. He's on a podcast telling the story about how back in his youth he supposedly stumbled across Moe or Mal Temple or a similar type structure in those lava fields. And there have been untold numbers of people lost and never a clue of them ever found, lost forever out in these lava fields on these Hawaiian islands.
Wow, that's cool.
I mean, that's not cool, but
I mean, it used to be hot, but now it's cool.
3, in the case of the couple who were hiking and the guy's girlfriend going right down a trail to drop a deuce, or as I like to occasionally say, I had to stop by the community pool and drop off a few young'uns. While doing this, she was approached out of nowhere by a man brandishing a knife who said to her that he was going to rape her. The boyfriend's first words were, "The searchers were looking in the wrong area." Stop. If I had been lost and heard my wife say that statement, the next question to her is, "Honey, when you saw them looking in the wrong direction, did you tell the searchers and their leader that you were looking for him in the wrong place?" She better hope like hell that her truthful reply to me included the keywords, "I begged and pleaded with the searchers until my voice was gone and wrote it in bold letters, you're looking in the wrong area." But seriously, I believe that the boyfriend's statement, the searchers were looking in the wrong direction, wrong way, etc., should be on a list of red flag items to double check when looking at missing persons cases. I believe that many a time the people searching for someone start their search in the wrong location. This can be an important answer to why the person does get found. Also, that would be an embarrassing career-killing blunder that one of the head of the search party discovered their mistake, quietly corrected the mistake on the maps and the grid so that it didn't look like a total idiot. Do you agree? Not always, but I know it's happened before. And pride and ego and public image rule the day sometimes. So yeah, it's possible. We've talked about this plenty of times with Soraya and other people that there's a certain amount of assumption of incompetence that happens where I see people like, well, the searchers were bad, or the guy who was using the dogs, he had terrible dogs, or so I don't know. I mean, how much on the one hand, this is an entirely volunteer organization, so it's supported, but search and rescue is they train for it. That doesn't mean they're all super competent. And then, of course, they all have leaders, and sometimes the leaders can be bad. And certainly in plenty of David's books, he's talked about, like, okay, it's clear that the sheriff in this case who was running the search was totally incompetent because of the way he ran the search, because of there's no information, because of all the stuff that the people said afterwards. But I don't know if I would go so far as to say that search and rescue looks in the entirely wrong area and then they fudge the maps later in order to cover up for their mistake after the person is found dead in a completely different area. I don't know. That's a possibility, though.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be. These are the these unknowns that we can't find out that bother me about the whole 411 thing.
Yeah.
there's in every case, there's a set of questions that come to mind. It's like, well, did anyone ask that person about this, or did they look here, or did they, there's just, I can't give a specific because it's on a case by case basis. So, but I'm kind of the scriptard on the 411 thing. But I agree with Russ on the overall picture that, like, okay, there is strangeness going on here in the connections. It's looking at the details of each individual one that these questions arise in my head, and then there's no way to get those answers to those questions. And so it's kind of a frustrating thing to me to deal with. I'm just like, I can't get answers to the questions I want to ask these people, and I wish somebody else would have asked them.
Yeah.
And, I don't know.
Yes, I agree. And it seems to me a lot of times, and I've said this many times, that the questions don't get asked by the people involved because their mindset is, we're looking for somebody who's lost.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then when they find the person, whether they're alive or dead, they're like, okay, the job's done.
Yeah, it's easy for me, the guy that's reading the account,
Yeah.
to think of these questions because I'm seeing the big picture. Those people were in the situation.
Yeah, and
they weren't able to
a little
see.
girl's lost, find her.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's like, you imagine each single one of those people don't know all the details that the other people know until after it's all over and somebody makes an account and goes and gets the information, debriefs each person.
Yeah.
Then it's easy to look at it as a whole and say, well, why didn't they do this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah. So in the rest of the email, which is still, there's a lot more stuff there, but I'm not going to go through it all. But basically, he's going through other cases and talking about repeat offenders and possibility that there are human predators. And yes, dude, I think all of that's possible. And I think that you're asking good questions. But, and this doesn't, I'm not sure if you're actually doing this because it seems like you're really studying the topic, but you're looking, basically this entire email is basing you've got a whole bunch of questions about 2 or maybe 3 different cases. And that's just, I just don't see the 411 topic in that direction. We're never going to be able to answer most of those questions you're asking. That doesn't mean they're not good questions, but it does mean that because of the nature of the data, you have to look at it big picture. You can't focus on a case and just ask a million questions about it and get yourself all bogged down in all these details that you'll never know because the information is gone. Or the person wasn't there to ask the question at the time. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, is it possible that some of these 411 cases are repeat psychopath offenders, rapists, killers? Yes, totally. But in the very big picture of all the cases that you're looking at through this particular kind of lens, you see that there are patterns that are hundreds of years in length and span the entire planet. And that doesn't sound like a psychopath killer or even a cult of psychopath killer. Like everybody has different. So it's just there's too much strange stuff across the entirety of the cases. So yes, you can bog yourself down in asking a million questions about, the girl who went to go pee or the Hawaii case. But to me, I'm not sure that that's the right way to go about it because we can't answer any of those questions.
Right. That's the frustrating part.
That's right. So. But thanks for the email. Appreciate it. And I'm glad you're looking deeply into it. And I'd say, if you just keep researching. But yeah, you ask a whole lot of questions here, and then you pose a lot of different scenarios of possibilities. And yeah, I'd say, yes, all of these things are possibilities, but there's just no way to know that. So that's why you can't do it like that on a case-by-case basis. And so really the question is, why is there a pattern across hundreds of cases rather than can we ask a million questions about 2 or 3 cases? Yep. So you pick one very mysterious case and there's just like a million questions you want to ask, but you can't. And you can, but you'll never get any answers to them. So look at a whole bunch of cases and say, does that weird case that I want to ask a million questions about have a lot of similarities to hundreds of other ones around the world? And the answer to that question is yes. And that's what's weird about 411. And that's also why it's frustrating, because the next thing you want to do is dive back into one of the cases and be like, well, why is it like this? And now I need to ask a million questions about this other case. And you can't do it because the information doesn't exist in a way where you can ask for it.
Yeah. So my question is, are these correlations anomalies of the incomplete data per case?
Could be. Yeah.
Because, I mean, I love Sherlock Holmes. Like, I'm a huge fan, right? And every Sherlock Holmes case, he makes it look like something that is completely not, because you just don't have all the information.
Yeah, that's right.
And Sherlock Holmes has this way of putting that out of his mind in the very beginning, and only looking at what data is available, right?
Yeah.
And he, of course, he has also other abilities of being able to find data that nobody else pays attention to.
And go around and ask the people involved.
Yeah, and he is the guy that gets to do all of the stuff that we want to do with the 411 cases, right?
That's
We
right.
want to go ask the questions. Well, what was the footprint? Was there a frickin' cigar ash in that footprint?
That's right.
You know, was it from a particular type of tobacco that came from the mountains of Tibet? You know, I mean, that's what I want to do. That's what Sherlock Holmes does. But my point is that every case, when you look at the Sherlock Holmes stories, they always look like something that they're not in the very beginning.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it's possible that these incomplete stories all have similarities across, you know, that make it where we see all these strange connections. Like, is that an anomaly of the incompleteness of each story is my question.
But in Sherlock Holmes, it was the other way around, right? They started out looking like a totally mundane, like that guy totally murdered that woman. Case closed.
Because of
it wasn't mysterious, the way the case was presented. And then Miss Sherlock Holmes goes through and finds out, oh, it's a whole lot more complicated than that. And there's a whole lot more interesting stuff that happened here. And the guy who actually did it, or what actually happened, was actually a very interesting and long and complicated story, whereas it starts out in the Sherlock Holmes cases, it's cut and dried, that guy killed that person for this reason.
Right.
Whereas these cases are the other way around. They look weird and mysterious and strange.
But there are some of them that look weird and mysterious and strange, and Sherlock is like, it's elementary.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just so
right.
simple.
He does turn some very strange ones into simple things, but
My
a lot
point-
of times it's like, no, you know, clearly that guy killed that person.
Yeah, but the point is that it's the incomplete set of information, because the way he always shows that there's a completely different situation going on here is by finding new evidence.
Yeah, that's
which
right.
we can't do.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why it bothers me. I was just like,
Which is why it's interesting, because what you do in those, this is the method for catching serial killers. Because a good serial killer doesn't leave you enough evidence in one scene to catch him.
Right.
So you have to like go back to the police station or wherever all the archives are and dig through every freaking file you can find and start, oh, look, that one looks a little bit like this one. And you start putting all these cases together, and then you build a profile based on the evidence that was gathered at each different scene to catch some wide-ranging killer.
right.
And that's why the Politis work is interesting, because that's kind of what he's doing.
Exactly,
You know,
yes.
because he's like, each individual case does not have enough information to solve it.
Right.
So what do we do?
He's using a tried and true method.
of police work.
Yeah. And I understand that. That's why
I know you understand that.
I'm on board with you on that.
Yeah.
I just that is still a question in my mind, though. Is
the lack of data in each individual case causing the anomalies across the entire case load?
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Maybe.
maybe and maybe not.
And I would say with this stuff, it's just like any other kind of profiling attempt. You have to wait for new cases to take place.
Yeah.
To narrow
And then
your
you
field.
weed out some of the old ones that actually
Don't fit
were
anymore.
because, you know, somebody didn't look in the right place, and then they fudged
Yeah.
the account at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
Yep. And I think that was Soraya's thing too, is that, you know, some of these cases maybe don't belong in these books.
Yeah.
You know.
I completely agree with that.
Right.
Okay. This one's called Cat Blanket from Anne. Hi. So Kyle was right. The curly tails, or the danglies on the blanket, were meant as a diversion or sacrifice to be played with rather than the main part of the blanket. Also to attract the cat. But it's the capitalized and cat capitalized. So it would agree to swap for the blanket that I sent to you.
Very, very genius right there.
Tell Kyle I appreciate his shout out of praise. I am a bit insecure about giving things I make. Old ladies crocheting is such a cliche.
Oh my God.
Dude.
But it's like, when you're badass, you're badass.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
who cares how cliche
You
it is?
become beyond cliche.
That's right.
When you're that badass at it. It's just so amazing. Enjoyed George Howard's descriptions of his experiences. His photos are great, but the words set the mood and context. All sorts of good wishes all around from Anne. And P.S., give me points for resisting the temptation to write this out in cursive and send you a photograph of it. Thanks,
Totally
Anne.
troll him.
Yeah,
I
she's
think you
totally
should.
trolling me. Okay, so should I read this comment
Which one is it?
about this is the one with the link with the...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's do that next.
This is a fantastic comment. Sent Kyle down a rabbit hole, and we got to... So this one's from, as a comment on Contact Us on the website from The Snuggler. Was listening to the Giza power plant episode about resonant frequency feedback loops of the pyramids. It reminded me of an article I read a while back, which, in my opinion, explains the scoop marks at Aswan, and also how the diorite balls drilled through solid granite, leaving drill marks. And then he gives the link here. It's a place called, it's applingjewelry.com.
Yeah. So I saw this post and I followed that link, and this is the story from applingjewelry.com. Jewelry of the Gods is on the main header of the webpage. Quote, sound technology is magic, end quote, by Jeffrey Appling. Academia says that the scoop marks in granite near the unfinished obelisk were made by pounding round diorite rocks against the granite walls. Above are round diorite boulders said to have been used to hand pound the scallop grooves and scoops shown below. So he's got pictures of the diorite balls, and then below is the pictures of the scoop marks on the unfinished obelisk. When I use and apply this ancient technology of energy, frequency, vibration to hard aggregate, I see the similarities of those who mastered it before me. Below is a fractured piece of nephrite jade that I will be scooping and coring. And he has a picture of him holding this little piece of stone in his hand. And then he says, pictured below is I don't know how to pronounce this stone, nephrite?
Nephrite? I don't know.
Below is
Don't
the
ask me.
nephrite after coring and scooping. And again, a set of pictures. Yeah, I mean, the scoop marks in this stone are just like what you see at the unfinished obelisk. And then he has a set, the second picture in that set is these pieces of metal that are still stuck in the scoops.
Yeah.
So he says, by way of hypersound vibration, the metal tube thrust through the tough jade with ease, just as it did in the granite cores in Egypt. And he pictures them below. So he shows the pictures of the cores and the tiny groove at the end of the core where obviously a tool that was coring down into it was. And so what he's using these little steel pipes. He says the aggregate is instantly being drilled when in contact with the tool. Should the tool displace itself, it will drill where placed once again. Sometimes a skip mark will appear, and he shows an example of that in a picture. Multiple skips made by my round tool along the nephrite's side. Then he says core drill tool marks are visibly seen in the granite below in Egypt, and he shows the tool marks. And then he says the round core holes above and one square hole below in Egypt. And he shows that. I don't know where this square hole is, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then there's the star.
Yeah, he says, so he says, unlike Egypt, geometric holes are found in California, Massachusetts, Norway, and more. And there's a picture of the star-shaped hole in a stone.
Yep.
A star hole in Massachusetts, star holes by Jeffrey Appling below. And he shows another picture, what looks like a piece of granite with star holes in it.
Yeah.
So he goes on to say, when drilling through solid rock using a specific frequency of vibration, the metal tube or solid rod flows nicely like a hot knife through butter. And he has a set of stones there with all of the holes he cut into them with this tiny little tube of metal. Once the frequency is changed, the metal tube or bar of metal becomes locked in the stone and it cannot be removed.
Yeah.
The metal rod can only be removed from the stone if the same frequency is reintroduced. Find the frequency of vibration that drove the metal rod into the stone, and the metal rod will release. Sound familiar? And then he has a picture of the sword and the stone.
Yeah.
There is truth in myth if you know the meaning behind the story. Know the frequency, and you too can be king. Hail to the king, baby.
Yeah.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. You see this? This is my boomstick. He has some picture of a guy holding a...
Yeah, that's from a movie, which I can't remember the name of right now. Yeah. Boomstick.
Yeah, so he says...
Army of Darkness. Thanks.
Yeah, anyway.
Thanks, Ryan.
Basically, he's a jeweler, and I was actually looking through the website, and he makes some amazing jewelry.
Yeah, so he uses a sonic tools to cut.
Yeah.
And
he's cutting through these stones with ease with this tiny little, narrow-walled tube. I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
So, yeah, I sent him...
So he's saying it looks like that technology writ large on some of these structures in Egypt.
That's right.
And so, yeah, we would like to get him on the show.
Yeah, so I sent him an email to the contact portion of the page there. And I was just like, bro, you need to come on the show.
Yeah.
Tell us about
but
this
yes,
school.
thanks for that link, man. That was great. From the Snuggler.
Yeah, so you guys should go to, I don't know how to get, let's see. It's got a strange...
I sent him I put the link in there.
Okay. Well, yeah, for the listeners that are not in the Discord.
Well, they're screwed.
You have to put it in the show notes.
Laura wants some jewelry. All right, 2 more emails, and then we're done with these. This one's from Chris. It's called Space Ramen Shaman. Happy holidays. Thank you for the latest podcasts. I always enjoy the episodes with GMA. I forgot to mention my route to you guys. It was Joe Rogan with Randall to all podcasts available with Randall. His earlier Wanderer Traveler Studying the Landscape days sounded cool. Before listening to your podcast with him, I came across another podcast called Earth Ancients with Randall. I skimmed through Earth Ancients podcast and found an episode on pyramids that the Snake Bros need to check out. Maybe you could give it a listen on one of your road trips and give it a quick review. And then he gives a link to it. It's called Valery Uvarov, Russian Pyramid Science. He says, my BS detector was on full alert the entire time, but his solutions to some of the pyramid uses and problems seem to make sense. High pitch. I was a mason apprentice for a while and have worked in various construction fields and was a musician for many years, so it was easy to get hooked on your podcast. I like to climb mountains and contemplate the universe while up there. And when I am done being a hippie and get back to work, I will throw you some green energy. Peace, love, and rock and roll. Thanks, Snakes, from Space Ramen Shaman.
Heck yeah, buddy. Peace, love, and rock and roll.
Throw you some green energy. Cold hard cash. Okay, last one here. This is from Sean. He says, hello, Snake Bros. Been listening to the podcast for a while now, and you two saved my brain. I got sucked into Tartaria, and y'all helped me level out. Bringing me back to reality, he says. Favorite episodes are by far when you have Laird Scranton on. His research is amazing. Your book reports help me get into it a lot more. Love the tunes, the laughs, and the warms and fuzzies. Keep up the awesome work. Snakes! From Sean.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
We were just on a sort of Swapcast group podcast thing before the show. And one of the guys on there brings up Tartaria.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is Tartaria? That starts this whole discussion.
So Jeff said we have a recovering Tartarian listening to our podcast.
That's crazy. Synchronistic.
Yeah.
All right. And that concludes
the last third segment of the year.
Third segment of the year. That's right. Snakes. Physics, the way you should be glad it is not taught. Here on Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Final segment. Listener communications and musings. So, I wanted to go through some of these stories, but you're like, are you pushing me into the physics, huh? You want me to start that?
Well, no. I mean, do whatever you think.
All right. No, it's already been prompted, so. So yeah, I just basically what I have to say is on the subject of dark matter, which I have been annoyed by for a long time. And so anyway, I kind of got tired of looking at and reading about this whole process of searching for what it is, and finally something, I think it was your exoplanets thing that kind of made me, that was 30% brain expansion for me, because it was like looking at the big picture, and that kind of inspired me again to like, oh man, that is really freaking cool and really interesting. And that kind of led me back to dark matter and what the hell is going on. And I have this idea, and I've talked about it many times on the podcast, and it's probably wrong, but I just want to basically lay it out as best I can briefly. The idea is that gravity is a resonance and so what does that mean? Like what if the phenomenon that we notice as gravity, we always notice it basically pushing or pulling towards these giant objects floating in space, right? Well, what if it doesn't require those objects at all? What if it's a resonance across all of space? And so there is this ringing, and that ringing creates patterns of high energy fluctuations and then nodal lines or nodal points. The nodal points would be like the hinge where the two sides of the wave are fluctuating, and that hinge is low energy. It doesn't move. So the idea was very much, and we've been joking about this the last few episodes, but the idea of cymatics, the fluctuating areas of the medium are throwing objects off of that fluctuation, right? In cymatics, they're just grains of sand, and they're bouncing away. They're being bounced by that fluctuation, and they're landing in these nodal lines that are not fluctuating, and so they stay there, and they pile up, and it becomes a noticeable pattern. So what would this look like if it was not on a two-dimensional surface, but in a three-dimensional medium? So imagine if you had a glass full of water, and you vibrated the glass. What does the vibrational structure look like within that glass, within that water? Water's not a really good candidate because it's not very elastic. It doesn't, but air is, right? Air is a really good candidate.
Yeah.
So you can vibrate a chamber of air. And we've seen this where, we've talked about this, the sonic levitation.
Yeah.
Where they levitate light objects within a three-dimensional space, that they're sending vibrations into that. They're sending sound waves into that space, but they're sending it in there on three axes. So it's creating this three-dimensional standing wave pattern, which can hold objects. The objects don't want to go where the high energy is. They want to be where the low energy is, or maybe vice versa.
It makes a pocket or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea. And so it seems plausible to me that gravity is a resonant field that permeates all of space. And so where we notice it are the nodal points that are actually the low energy areas. And that's where all the matter falls into. So that's the basic idea. And so the dark matter thing is it's self-explanatory with that idea. It's like, if you created this resonance in an area where there was no matter floating around, there would still be nodal points in the vibration. and let's say on half of let's say you just pick any cube of space, and on half of the cube you put a bunch of dust, and on the other half of the cube there's nothing. And then you start the vibration going, and all of the dust on the one side falls into the nodal points of the vibration in that side. And so you have planets and stars, and they're all orbiting around, and they're doing whatever they do in this vibration. But the other side doesn't have anything. So it looks to us, it's like, well, there's no gravity there. And yet when we look out into the universe, we notice a bunch of gravity in places where there's no matter. And this is what brought about the dark matter. Basically, they were looking out at these galaxies, and they could, when they were first able to start charting the movements of these stars in these galaxies, they were then seeing that they were moving a lot faster where they should be moving slower as they got further and further out from the center of the galaxy. And so what it turned out to be is, once they ran all the calculations, was, well, there needs to be a whole lot more gravity than there actually is based on the amount of mass that we see in this galaxy. Yeah. Now, they were only able to measure the, movements coming towards their instruments or away from their instruments. They weren't able to see the sideways motions. They were able to see the forward and moving away because of the Doppler shift. Things that were more red shifted were moving away. Things that were blue shifted were coming towards us.
But and so parallax is hard to do with something that far away.
Right.
Yeah.
The side to side motions they were unable to do. But they still, nevertheless, got way more mass. And the reason why they got way more mass is because mass is connected to gravity, right? When they talk about mass, they're also talking about gravity, because the theory is that mass causes gravity or something to that effect, right? So with the idea that gravity or gravitation or whatever the gravitic effect is actually just a resonance, kind of like a field, like you would think of the Higgs field or one of these quantum fields that's resonating. It doesn't require mass to be there. But anyway, going back to the Standard Model, they recently they've done all these measurements, and there's other reasons. Like they have their reasons for not simply wanting to change their theories about gravity to make gravity work for what they're seeing. And what they say is, you can't just alter the orbitals and say, well, maybe in these large structures, gravity is a little bit different, and so the orbits would be this way because of this or that, because there are other observations that they've made that also point to gravity being in places that it shouldn't be, and that is with the background radiation.
Yeah. Right.
And they're calling it dark matter. So it's kind of confusing, because it's like, is it really, are there other aspects about it that make them want to call it matter? Or is it just that they're detecting what should be gravity, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the question that I wanted to look into some more, because I've learned that the cosmic microwave background has indications of dark matter. And so they can't just modify gravity, their theories about gravity, to make that work, because that doesn't answer these other questions that they have that come from the microwave background. Now, I don't understand what it is about the cosmic microwave background that makes them think that, but it has to do with the whole theory of the early universe and how it formed and all this kind of stuff. So the other thing that's going on,
it's not distributions of the energy.
It may be.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly what it was.
Okay.
About the,
because they see patterns in the CMB that, you're right, that indicates that there's
dark
some
energy.
Yeah, there's some kind of mass anomaly happening.
Yes.
But they call it a mass anomaly because they associate it with gravity.
Because they're associating it with gravity.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's right.
So the thing that bothers me is that they didn't call this anomalous gravity.
Yeah.
Instead, they called it dark matter.
Yeah.
When, in my opinion, the idea that gravity is a an effect caused by mass, that's a theory.
Yeah. It's a correlation. It's pretty much totally accepted by everyone.
It's completely and totally accepted to the point that they don't bother talking about gravity when that's really what it is.
Yeah.
That they're detecting. They talk about mass.
They talk about matter.
Because they are completely and totally connected in their minds. And so my big question is it possible that mass is not the cause of gravity?
Yeah.
Is that gravity is something...
Or is not the direct cause.
Direct cause, yeah. Yeah. Well, if you had an area of empty space where there's no matter, quote unquote matter, like chunks of little whatever the stuff, yet it's able to have a gravitational pull.
Yeah.
Right? That would be completely decoupled from mass.
Absolutely.
Unless you wanted to say that gravitational anomaly had mass. What are you saying? Right?
Yeah.
Mass is energy.
Yeah.
That's also another thing. It's like mass and energy are the same thing.
Right. Well, I guess what I mean when I say not directly is that in the system that you're talking about, and maybe I'm jumping too far ahead here, but in the system that you're talking about, it seems to me that that system must include mass having an effect on the system.
Yes, I think that mass absolutely has an effect on the system, for sure.
Yeah. So it looks like mass, when it's present, is totally correlated to gravity.
Right, yeah.
Because of the way mass works with this medium or whatever it is that's causing the gravitational field.
So it has to go all the way down to the fundamental levels of what all this stuff is.
Yeah.
And that's what we discovered when we were working on this idea, which we had we called it elastic universe, which is like, elasticity. But it's anyway.
That was like my long time ago dig on electric universe.
Yeah.
I'm like, elastic universe is way better.
Yeah, so moving on with the what's going on right now. There's a great podcast episode of the Mind Escape. Is it Mind Escape? Mindscape podcast.
Yes, Sean Carroll.
By Sean Carroll. And now I'm gonna have to pull it up so I can get this name right. I don't remember what the woman's name was.
Was she the one that was talking about quantum black holes and stuff too?
No.
Okay.
No, she's just talking about dark matter. This is where I learned most of this stuff. I mean, I've read a bunch of these stories, but I love this woman's enthusiasm for the subject, and I like the way she talks about it. It's just a good Lena Necib, Necib.
What's the episode number?
96.
Okay.
Great episode, and this is where I was learning all this stuff. So,
oh yeah, I listened to that one. Cool.
Yeah. So there's a cool story in there. She's talking about, when they were originally measuring the motions of these stars in these distant galaxies and only being able to see them moving away or coming towards them. They built this new experiment, and it was called the Gaia Project. And it's where they're mapping the stars in our own galaxy, and they're able to map them in three axes of motion.
Yeah. Using a giant supercomputer with algorithms.
Yeah. And so I think right now it's supposed to map 1 billion stars. Right now they have like a million or something, or 6 million. And by next year, I think she said, they're going to have 150 million.
Yeah.
And so she's talking about, man, I can't wait for that, because once they get all this information, it gives them a lot more. It's like a much higher resolution looking at the what's going on in the galaxy. And when the interesting thing is when they got this initial data dump, they started charting it out, and one of the scientists discovered an anomaly in our own galaxy where there was a collision between one of our galaxy's satellites, which was a pretty large one. It was about 1 to 10% the size of our galaxy. And this thing collided with our galaxy, and it brought in all these stars and everything. And so they noticed it sort of fanning out into the galaxy, and it was a sausage shape. So the guy called it the Gaia sausage.
Yeah.
And
looks like a sausage.
And so Lena is pointing out that, okay, this shows us that we can't, with this low resolution model of the spiraling galaxy, say that, okay, everything's basically moving like this. So let's calculate, blah, 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 and then come up with the amount of dark matter.
Yeah.
Because there actually is a whole lot of details, like the fact that there's a giant collision actually still taking place between us and an object that are 1 to 10% the size.
It's still running into us.
Yeah. And so they're throwing off all the motions of all these stars, and everything's changing and moving, because these things are moving in the wrong direction. And, so she was saying, okay, we're going to have to go back and look through all of because as they've been studying dark matter, they're trying to narrow they're trying to figure out how to narrow it down to like what exactly should they be looking for. In other words, they're starting out by casting out the things that it's not, right? And they call it parameter space. They're narrowing the parameter space.
Yeah, they're narrowing. They're getting rid of stuff that they know dark matter isn't.
Yeah,
in terms of what they're looking for.
And another thing that you're trying to do in this process, it's like investigative work, which she points out. And so you're trying to come up with some data set that somebody, or like theorists and people who build experiments, can then take that data and say, okay, here's the theory. Now let's build an experiment to test it.
Yeah.
So if your parameter space is huge, then there's all these possibilities for all these different theories, which there are a bunch of theories about what dark matter is and all this stuff. And so the more they can narrow that parameter space, the more they can throw out the ones that don't fit the parameter space.
Yeah. Like WIMPs was one of
WIMPs,
one of the big ones. Yeah.
And eventually, once they narrow it down far enough, they theorists, whatever theories are surviving, then maybe they can come up with ways to build experiments to test those theories. And so as this project continues and they get more and more data about our own galaxy, this is going to be big jumps towards reaching that goal.
Yeah.
And so the search for whatever this is has to be, the theory has to be consistent with all the data. So if it's true what she's saying, that they can't just alter their theory of their ideas about gravity, I don't know. That kind of bothers me because I want to look more into that because
like why?
What do they mean by saying we can't just alter gravity? So I'm wondering, the question in my head is, how much would they have to, right? Can you, in other words, it wouldn't account for what's going on with the cosmic microwave background or some of the other observations that they've made. So they're saying it's not just a gravity problem. And so this is what I want to be looking more into, is to find out all of these other observations that seem consistent with the idea that there's actually a form of matter that has mass that doesn't interact with the electromagnetic spectrum, that may not interact with itself, right? But it has gravity, so it's somehow interacting with
everything
the other
else.
laws of physics that in terms of what matter and mass does, but it doesn't actually interact with any of the particle physics of the standard model in any other way that we know of. But it has an effect on the cosmic microwave background. So this is kind of like leading me down the rabbit hole, and I want to find out more about it because ether. Thank you, Snake Force.
Yep.
It's I don't know. I know that they did experiments back in the day with these giant balls of lead where they hung them from fine crystalline fibers on, basically suspended like on with one on a lever. And so when the lever was pointed to the side and the whole thing is hanging with a counterweight on the other side, it's hanging from this crystalline fiber, and then they put this giant ball of lead next to the other giant ball of lead, and they notice a tiny electrical signal in the crystalline fiber because the one giant ball of lead that's hanging suspended is trying to pull towards the other one, and it's twisting that fiber.
Yeah.
ever so slightly.
Yeah.
But they nevertheless got a signal, right, from the piezo crystals. Right. So they're like, okay, they are pulling each other together due to their gravity.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that actually proof, or are you just, is that proof that it comes from mass and matter?
Yeah. No.
I didn't think so. It's just like, you're just proving the other observations we've made that, yes, for some reason the Earth is being pulled towards the sun and the moon is being pulled towards the Earth. And
yeah. They've proved that they're correlated.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that that the existence of mass is part of the mechanism.
Right.
Or that the existence of mass may become part of the mechanism, but that the mechanism doesn't require mass to work.
Right. Yep. So I love the cymatics analogy, because it seems to do the same thing, right? You get all this stuff that clumps together, but then once the clump gets big enough and heavy enough because of the collection of more and more stuff, it then begins to dampen the resonance itself and cause secondary effects in the overall resonance.
Yeah.
So you have rings around planets, and you have smaller satellites circling larger objects.
Yeah.
And these are due to the secondary effects that the large accumulations of matter have on the overall resonance.
Yeah.
That's ubiquitous throughout the universe, that is gravity. And
Yes.
that idea, that concept, makes dark matter completely make sense, because if you have areas of empty space, they're just not going to have giant clumps of matter in them.
Yeah.
But they still may have nodal points that are almost the same as what you would notice in a planet.
Yeah.
Except that the planet's probably having some secondary effects.
Right.
On the overall resonance. So
go ahead.
So this brings me to the points, the points around the Lagrange points.
Lagrange points.
Somebody in the Discord, who was it? Can't remember. Pointed out
Prototypical Dave.
Yeah, Prototypical Dave pointed out the Lagrangian points. And when I looked at that graph, I was just like, bam, like this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it's really strange that there are these places, like if you chart out the orbit of an object around a larger object, that there are Lagrange points along that orbital line, but a significant space away to make it almost like, this, if you plotted it out, it would be this nice geometrical pattern. It looks so much like cymatics to me, so I don't know. And do they think that Lagrange points have anything to do with dark matter? Why would an object stay where it is? Why is it when the planet's not even over there at that time? It should be being pulled straight into the larger body. From there.
No, it's
strange.
supposed to have something to do with the interaction, the gravity and orbital interactions between the planet and the sun, and where these are 0 points.
Yeah, it makes sense when it's directly between the two.
Them. Yeah,
but when it's off to an angle and forming a triangle, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so there's a picture.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's supposed to be, well, I mean, I don't know, but the ones that are in the orbit also include the velocity of the orbit.
Right.
So.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's another place where it can orbit the sun right there, and the Earth won't pull it out of the orbit.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it gets any closer to the Earth,
yeah,
it'll be pulled out of orbit. But if it gets further away, what happens? It falls into the sun.
It falls it in. Yeah.
That doesn't
it doesn't make sense. Or
it's because the combination of the gravity between the Earth and the sun when it's on the other side.
Yeah, it keeps it in that spot.
But there is an L3 over there.
Yeah, on the other side.
Completely on the opposite side.
Right.
How does that happen?
Where it should be being pulled stronger by both of them.
Right.
Yeah. I know.
It's pretty
very strange.
pretty suggestive to me that those are
it's
nodal
a resonant system. Yeah.
Those are nodal points. in the cymatics, I'm calling it cymatics, but cymatics is a 2D representation of the resonant. What does it look like in 3 dimensions? That's the other question. I've not been able to find a way to see it, and I tried to build experiments to create a way to see 3-dimensional cymatic patterns within so I used water, which is a bad idea, but it didn't really work. I'd used water and tried to suspend like a fine powder of crystally reflective
that's right,
materials inside the water. And so you could stir it up and then you could shine a light through it and you would see all these beautiful reflections, right? And where those materials had coalesced, it would be noticeable.
Yeah.
And so then I exposed that, and this is where the whole term, this tangent cube of science came from, because it was this plexiglass cube of 1/2-inch plexiglass.
So you could see through it. Yeah.
You could see through it, but it had flat sides, so it wasn't being warped by the lensing effect of a round.
Yeah.
And so I put this speaker on it and hooked it up to the loudest amplifier and just boom, just like blasting these tones, trying to find the resonant frequency of that cube full of water to see if I could get the crystalline particles to coalesce into the nodal points within it, right? But I didn't have the amplitude. I couldn't make it do it. But I set the cube down and just left, and I remember it just sat in there for weeks or whatever. And I came back one time and just decided to just like shine the light into it. And it had like the Coriolis.
Yeah.
There was just this beautiful, tiny, wispy spiral inside, coming up from the base, spiraling up like like the caduceus or something.
Yeah, there was convective stuff happening.
Yeah.
And it was moving this stuff around. Yeah.
And you could just see it just ever so slightly. It was really cool, but didn't answer any of my questions.
Yeah. Doing cymatics in a 3D medium is hard.
Yeah, and I want to be able to see it.
Right.
And it'd be cool if you could get this to work and simulate it. What would it look like? Would it be clumps of things revolving around each other? And
yeah,
that'd be interesting.
Well, I agree that it seems to be annoying that there's this unthinking connection of gravity and mass, so much so that they are interconnected terms, that they're interchangeable terms. You listen to these physicists talk to each other, or when they're trying to talk to the public, and they'll interchangeably use mass and gravity.
Yeah.
When they're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
And that seems to, like, from my point of view, and I think from your point of view, that seems to be like a huge blind spot.
It's kind of a problematic thing because we don't have a good theory of gravity.
Yeah.
There's just not a good one.
And then you'll hear people say things like, well, Einstein's theory of gravity was proven. But when you look into that, what you see is what they're talking about is Einstein's theory of general relativity, and they're talking about gravitational lensing, which was shown to take place, which was something that, Einstein talked about, basically implied in his theory of general relativity, that if space-time is being warped by gravity, that that light would be affected by the warping, and that lensing therefore should take place, that in some cases with high gravity objects, or objects that seem to have a high gravity well, or just high gravity wells if you want to say it that way, would warp space around them to the point to where objects that were behind those gravity wells from our perspective would get warped by that lens of space-time. So when they finally did start to see gravitational lensing out in the universe, when they were able to look for it, they called this a proof of Einstein's theory of gravity. But what it really was direct evidence of Einstein's idea that gravitational forces would warp space-time and light would move in that lens in the same way that light moves through an optical lens, that it causes a lensing effect on light.
Okay, this reminds me or are you done with that or no?
No, go ahead.
Okay, kind of changing the subject a little bit. The other thing I like about the mental picture of the cymatics situation is dark energy, right? This accelerated expansion of everything, moving away from everything else in these large structures. This could be explained by the overall resonant frequency of this ubiquitous ether that is resonating, that ether of gravity is actually lowering in pitch. The whole resonant frequency is getting lower, and that would make all of the geometric figures that, of the nodal lines to the energetic vibrational areas expand. They would be getting larger. If you look on a Chladni plate, as you move up in frequency, you're seeing the same patterns,
smaller,
but they get smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And of course, with the way we do these cymatics experiments, when you have you have these limitations. Your limitation is the size of the plate or the thickness of the plate. It has a very specific resonant frequency. So you get a pattern, and then as you move up in the spectrum, the pattern dissipates because you're now out of tune. And then eventually you reach a higher harmonic, and bam, you get the resonant frequency again, but it's a higher harmonic, so the pattern is smaller. But if you didn't have borders, right? In other words, that
if the edges of the plate were not protected by walls.
Or that the ether or this elastic medium, whatever it is tunable to any frequency, then as you're lowering the pitch, they just gradually get larger and larger and larger. And so that could explain like that the overall pitch of the entire resonance is dropping. That's why everything is moving away from everything else.
Yeah.
Especially in from large structure to large structure, because each structure, galaxies, all that stuff would have secondary effects.
Yeah.
Keeping their local system in tune because of the inertia of all the mass.
Yeah.
That's resisting that change within that local bubble.
And the cosmological constant is only taking place in the large open spaces between enormous structures. So it totally fits what you're talking about. That dark energy, that whatever it is causing the expansion, only takes place in the very, very empty places between enormous structures in the universe.
Yeah.
Which is what you're talking about. So like, if we were seeing the dark energy effects within these tightly packed clumps of material, that would be weird. Right. But the fact that where you see it taking place the most is out in the very empty places between enormous things.
Right. And those places would be easy to manipulate because there's not a whole lot of mass in there with inertia.
Yeah.
Like once you get the clumps of stuff, they're harder to move around.
Yeah, right? They have inertia. Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a cool idea. But going back to the standard model, I want to better understand what they're doing, what they've noticed, and why they think what they think, because I do think they have good reason. For most, like yes, there are areas where people just accept things. We had talked about this where, there's sort of a culture within the scientific community where you don't want to step out of line or you get ridiculed and stuff. And so they're very careful.
Yep.
And I get that. And so that could be the cause of some of these areas where we're just kind of slow.
Yeah.
In terms of our scientific understanding. But they are doing great work. They're building these massive things to try to learn more and everything. And just like with the podcast that I mentioned, just listening to the enthusiasm of this person.
Yeah.
In doing the detective work, as she describes it, seeking out this deep mystery and having no idea what it might be, but trying to rule things out and stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
So kind of reignited my interest.
And I think that, one of the things we talked about that we both want to look into is there a good reason why they connect so strongly mass and gravity?
Yeah, I want to.
We know of that one experiment with the giant lead balls and the fiber wire, but are there other ones that give better, that do, because I can't think. I mean, can you think of an experiment where you could be like, how do you even try to find out? Like, if your assumption already is that mass and gravity are connected, and then you put two giant things together and you see them pull together, you're like, all right, theory proven, right?
Yeah.
But the question of dark matter in the first place is what sparks the idea that maybe it's more complicated than that.
Maybe it's more complicated than that.
That yes,
but they seem to have already ruled out that all you need to do is modify your theory of gravity. That's the annoying part. Or maybe there's really good
theory of gravity are they going to modify?
I'm sorry, modifying gravity. I think because there was a group of people who said, well, when we're looking at the motions of these stars, maybe we can just modify our ideas of their orbital mechanics in terms of what the effects of their gravity are going to have on each other.
Yeah. No.
They're wanting to like alter it in that sense. That was the question I had. Are they really talking about altering gravity slightly? Just like keeping it totally, it's attached to mass and all that. That's the idea I get. They're not really changing their ideas about gravity.
No.
They're just going to alter how it affects large structures and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that what we're talking about, that this idea that you have, that we've talked about for more than 10 years now, this elastic universe and the possibility that gravity is a field effect that doesn't require mass to exist, but nonetheless interacts with mass in such a close way that mass being in the places where the field is, which it will be, makes it look like the mass can be causing the gravity.
Right.
Because that mass is always going to be associated with large nodal points.
Yes.
And in some cases, like with black holes and other things, the nodal points are being supported probably by this enormous amount of mass that's stuck there, right? So yes, they're closely connected, but it's more of a triangle than like a back and forth. It's not mass is gravity, gravity is mass.
Yeah.
It's more like that there's a field and there's mass and there's gravity, and all of these things are part of the same system, but you can get rid of mass and still have gravity in the field.
Right.
But you can't get rid of the field and have gravity and mass, right? You need the field there and the field's effects. And so what we're talking about is not changing anything about what is thought about gravity or what has been observed, but instead changing the idea of what the mechanism is in order to explain all these anomalies.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think they're not talking about that.
Yeah, that's the idea I get. But must do more research.
Yeah.
To be sure. Yep.
Well, that was fantastic. I'm glad you're digging back into that. Well, I got one interesting thing in terms of astrophysics. It doesn't really completely tie into what you were just saying,
okay,
but it's interesting.
Tangent.
Because I'm trying to look at how are people measuring things in the universe. Mm-hmm. So we went over the standard candle, which was I loved that. But there's another one called a Cepheid variable. And I could just give a real brief explanation of this, but this is another way that astronomers this is another item that they can look for out in the universe and try to use it to measure distances to things when you can't do parallax because we don't have a wide enough angle because the thing is so far away, right? Because you can do parallax on nearby stars because you look in the winter, you look in the summer,
right?
And you got a wide enough angle even if the star is 600 light years away. But once you get to stuff that's outside of our galaxy, you pretty much can't do that. The angle's too tiny. So standard
margin of error is
standard candles are one way where they measure magnitude and then they have to correct for the amount of dust in between, and how do they check to find out what kind of dust it is and can they do that? And because if you're measuring with magnitude and there's some dust dimming your stuff. But a Cepheid variable is a really interesting kind of star. That again, they find these by doing these gigantic surveys. And basically, there are stars that are so huge and they pulse. Okay? They're enormous. Like, think of if you put one of these in the place of the sun, it would, its surface would be out where Neptune is.
Oh, man.
Okay? They're gigantic stars. And they're highly energetic. Like, the larger a star is, the brighter in general. I'm sorry. the more mass a star has, the brighter it is. Okay, a red giant can be a really big but low mass star, and they'll be dim. But these things are extremely high mass, and they're just absolutely gigantic, and they're really bright, and they go through these cycles that make them pulse. They get really big, and they get smaller, and they get, so think of it as like, when it's enormous, when it's full size, it would be out by the orbit of Pluto, and when it's fully shrunk down, it would come all the way into where Jupiter is, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. And okay, again, this is based on the standard model of physics and the theory of how stars work and stellar nucleosynthesis and all that kind of stuff. But all the math shows that the mass of the star and therefore its magnitude is directly related to the tempo of the
Say it again.
That basically the magnitude of the star, which is caused by the mass of the star, is directly related to the tempo of the pulse that it makes, the pulsing in and out. So they can look for these stars, and then they just time its pulse, and then they know exactly how big it is and how much mass it's got.
Okay.
And then they can know the magnitude and measure the distance. That's cool, if the theory is right.
Huh. That's really interesting. Yeah, so that would make sense. Like a bell. If you hit a bell, and let's say you knew exactly what the metal was.
Yeah.
And you knew the shape.
Right. You know it's a bell shape or whatever.
You know exactly what the shape is. And then you knew those two things.
Yeah.
Then you hear what frequency it makes. You can determine its mass.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
right.
and as it gets bigger, the tone gets lower in frequency.
That's right.
So this is the same principle.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just, you're going to see this same thing illustrated with cymatics. The reason why I love cymatics again is because it illustrates what resonance does, like what it really is. It's a visual illustration of this thing that we deal with all the time when we're listening.
Yeah.
We're listening to the resonance of a room. We're listening to the resonance of a musical instrument. Well, those resonances are created by the pattern of vibrations within that material, and that material is structurally, its molecules are certain structures that also have their own little cymatics. They're all resonating.
Yeah.
And they all have this very specific resonant frequency. And this goes all the way into chemistry and chemical reactions, why chemical reactions take place, why it throws off this piece and keeps this other one. It all has to do with their resonant frequencies when they come into contact with each other.
And nuclear reactions too. They're just much more. They have a much higher amplitude in terms of.
Yeah, but that's why I love it so much, because it's such a clear picture of what's going on.
Yeah,
and it's great with the drum head, because you can actually play with it like you can't with a piece of metal.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could go in there with a torch and cut off the corner and see what it does to the pattern. It'll tell you the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with the drum head, it's a lot easier by messing with the tuning lugs or putting a heavier object on it.
Yeah.
Because that the elasticity in the drum head is much more
malleable. Yeah, you can change it.
Malleable and delicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's elastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really cool. And I've talked to some chemists about this very thing, and I've had some great conversations about chemistry and the idea of cymatics. And it's like, holy crap. Yes, it's a great window into what the hell is going on. And so I wonder initially, how big is that window? Is this one of those things that really gives you a clue that is all the way to the cosmic sense, down to the quantum level? Is this how things work?
Yeah.
Right? Is this fundamental? And I think it is.
I think it is. Well, there we go. Mystery solved.
Next mystery.
All right. I think we're done.
Yep. You can get a hold of us at Brothers of the Serpent at gmail.com.
That's right.
Check out the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. Everything else is in the show notes, but probably not. So
none of it's going to be in the show notes.
I know that.
But yeah, go to the website for everything Brothers of the Serpent. There's a whole bunch of cool stuff on there. Check all that out. Thanks to History Shift, all of the Snake Force, all of you trolls in the troll room.
Yep.
Everybody that stuck around. I know it got late here, so I really appreciate you guys all sticking around.
Thanks to all the wonderful Christmas donations to the Pyramid Scheme.
Yes.
And all of the donators. Very much appreciated.
No, just the Christmas ones.
We love you all.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work or sleep.